our first volunteer.
No, I really like the concept that Jeremy brought up about using sort of conference time, because I think it's really hard to expect residents to be present at certain things given their busy schedule. And one of the things we had talked about in our program is for things like going to free clinics, taking a shift, and one of the shifts in one of your ED shifts or half of your ED shifts would be at the free clinic and not extra time.
Yeah.
For example, so utilizing the time that they already have as part of the program to incorporate a lot of these community outreach examples where they're able to be engaged, but they're not spending any additional time where they can focus on other things. And I feel like that would be a really quick investment for programs.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So we're using conference time and we're using some shift time as well. That sounds good. Anybody else come up with a good idea for community engagement for your program?
We in our program we have like a system where essentially like you can use your own time longitudinally. Yeah, like an opportunity to work one less shift every month, something or whatever it is. That's what you use it like. You want to like run helicopter, that's great. You do that. Yeah, it's to be able to be involved in
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea too. Anybody else have anything to share? All right, Tanisha.
So I think some of the thoughts and ideas that came up is where do we start when we have residents and even faculty that are not from this area and kind of don't know what they need or how they can be involved, or don't want to be too overbearing in terms of like going into a community and seem like an outsider, right? That savior complex. And one of the things that we kind of discussed was really partnering with the local like EMS or paramedic system and kind of starting off getting a layout of the city, because really a lot of times they know the city pretty well from either health checks or responding to local emergencies, and really kind of also offsetting that responsibility of a faculty member necessarily needing to like head to your immediate charge, kind of going with what's already there and setting up a mutual relationship in which what's happening pre-hospital is also being communicated with those who are working right on the front line, and kind of a good place to start, right? Like, if you have nothing, it's okay to start small and just also start with building your awareness before going out into a community in which you're not familiar with and in which you don't know, because you don't want to start implementing things that are not essentially sustainable. So I think that's like a good idea of like starting something that isn't there, but getting a good feel of like, hey, what's out there.
That was also another question that was raised in one of the groups that I was discussing with. Where do you go? Where do you start when you're new in the area? And like you said, you don't reinvent the wheel. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. There are already programs and institutions and groups that are doing amazing work, and pretty much in every small community, in every urban center. So just finding what's already in place, what's already going on, and just jumping in with that. And also, if you are a new program or if you're new to that community, I think it's worthwhile to spend a significant amount of time getting to know what's around you, getting to know the people around you, getting to know the medical school that kind of feeds into or that a lot of your residents come from, or getting to know the local high school, the local middle school, getting to know a little bit about that community will serve as a great foundation as well for community engagement going forth from there. So if you don't have that, I think that's a great place to start as well. Get to know your environment.
I just want to reinforce what you said about listening to the community and the savior mentality that can happen in situations like this. Because oftentimes institutions have not earned the trust of the community for decades, and then to come in with a program where you're going to be offering these interventions to be supportive to the community, there's often a question of why now? When you weren't there for the past 10, 15, 30, 50 years, however long the institution's been there. So I think the importance of listening to the community and finding out what the needs are in the community before just jumping into a program.
Yep. I heard somebody over there talking about a needs assessment and performing a needs assessment before you just go out and start feeling like you're doing something or saving somebody or fixing a problem that may not even be identified as a problem. And I think that's very, very important.
I think one last thing, because we're running out of time a little bit, to think about is that especially going back to not reinventing the wheel. Most of our programs, there's multiple other programs. There's internal medicine, there's family medicine, there's OB-GYN, there's other groups that are already doing things. And sometimes partnering with those other groups is the right answer. One of the things that we had started back in Denver is something called the Minority Allied Residency Council, because we realized that all of us were siloing, trying to do the same thing, trying to answer the same question. And until we got everybody together, we didn't realize that multiple other groups were already doing the same thing, and people could just very easily plug in or come out and move into something else. So thinking about all of those other resources that in emergency medicine we kind of silo ourselves that already exist, and kind of partnering with them.
Also, a lot of academic institutions, which is new to me, a lot of academic institutions already have a office of community engagement or civic something, right? And they already have the connections that you're looking for. They already have the people to contact that you're looking for, and that's also a great place to start. I want to give one more example before we wrap up here about something that we have going on at University of Chicago, which is called Community Champions. I think you were also a community champion, Chief Pope. And I followed in his great footsteps, and I am also now a community champion. But this is a GME-wide effort for residents of various specialties to get involved in community engagement. Unfortunately, we don't have any protected time because it is GME-wide, but what we do have is a pretty good paycheck on the back end of things for taking out, time from our busy schedules and our rest time to be involved with the community. The requirement is, I think, maybe 4 community service events or community engagement events throughout the academic year, and your paychecks or your stipend at the end is like $5,000. So it helps us feel like our work is valuable. Oftentimes, as the minority resident or the Black resident or the female resident or that resident, you feel like you have to take on these things, but quite frankly, we don't have the time, energy, and we're also not compensated appropriately, and we should be compensated for our work. So Community Champions allows you to be that. It also allows you to put your face in the community. So my most recent one was a high school panel where I just spoke to high schoolers about career paths in healthcare and how they could be a doctor if they wanted to, or they could be a nurse if they wanted to. And a lot of them had no idea what the next steps were, and that's just something that I opened up their eyes to. And it was crazy that in 2022 we still have students that aren't aware of the many opportunities and resources that they have around them, but they need to hear from us, and they need to hear from us like now, sooner rather than later, before they have that pipeline from high school to factory or from high school to whatever the common thing in your community is. So Community Champions was a great thing that I think University of Chicago started, partnered with another urban health initiative sort of community group or whatever, and it compensated us for our time. It recognized that we were busy, we were overworked, but also gave us many options and already set the structure for, here's a list of things you can get engaged with this month. Which one do you want to do? There's also stuff next month. Feel free to do that too. So that was great.
I was just going to comment too. I like what you said. You talked about seeing how residents are reacting to these things as well. And it reminds me just how I felt during residency, because I really sold myself during interviews as this community advocate, and then I didn't have time to do the work. And so just thinking about how it plays into residency wellness, because when I did have time to do community work in Detroit, I got to work with the Latinx community and speak Spanish. I felt so rejuvenated. This is what I want to do, and just get that taste of being the kind of doctor I want to be in the community where I wanted to serve. It just helped me feel so much better and get through the difficult nights and all the shifts that we worked. And so just remember how much this can affect wellness as well.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you guys.